Let's get a wiggle on and introduce the panel. We've got the fabulous Antony Warroll Thompson here. And forgive me, because we should have talked about this yesterday, because I know you have a fascination or a real interest in sleepwalking.
Well, sleepwalking has an interest in me, it seems. I mean, it's not something I do deliberately.
You're a sonambulator.
Yeah, I mean, I've known, ever since I was a child, when I used to sleepwalk from my junior school, I've done it all the way through. I blame it on cheese, but apparently I'm a chromosome short of something.
Yes. What's happened to you, Joe? Have you had any adventures while you've been out cold?
Recently I've called the police in my sleep, said I'm being burgled, and my wife, hand the phone to my wife, said I'm going out with a club, of course, start naked. I go down, and my wife's saying to the police, he's off, he's gone, and they're saying, stop, stop, they may have a gun, they may have a knife, and off I'm out. I'm very brave when I'm asleep. And I go out, and as soon as the air hits me, of course, I wake up, and she says, you deal with the police, they're on their way. So the police come down, I said, they went that way!
Did you? Have you done that?
I have, yeah, it's that serious. I mean, I've done several things. I've thrown my wife out of bed, jumped on top of her, said, hide, hide, there's a bomb. And also, when she was pregnant, 1 week before she gave birth, I jumped on top of her, almost gave birth, and said, there's a red light, stop, stop. And a week later, I did the same thing. We've got to go, it's a green. An hour...
Because I thought when you said red light, jumped on top of her, I just jumped to logical conclusions. It was 50 quid for your time.
But on green, it was probably my weight, but on green, her water's broke an hour later, so she was off. Yeah.
No, my words. No wonder Susie Amy's looking a bit... Second-class citizens if they know they were given a leg up into university. And what on earth are you going to do with Tabitha and Tarquin? You can't just dump them and forget about them, can you, Antony?
No. I mean, I think it's a simple policy where the government hasn't wanted to do it before, and that is streamlining kids, the bright kids, in schools so that they realise their potential, and they probably could get 3 A's if they were taught within an environment that they concentrated on. They weren't coming down to the lowest common denominator of pupils around who are disruptive and all that sort of thing.
So tear up everything successive governments have done to education since 1978 and go back to the way it was.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think there's a good idea for grammar schools to come back.
Yeah. In the interim, though, are you going to do anything?
No.
You're just going to leave it the way it is?
I mean, you do pigeonhole Tarquin and Tabitha a little bit, don't you?
Well, the interesting thing is, when I went to university way back in the mid-'80s, the stats were almost exactly the same in terms of the number of children that went to private school, and in fact, the university I was at had an even higher amount of public school figures there, and I went with only 2 A-levels, not 3, and it was a very weird experience, kind of feeling like you had a leg up.
Those who want to get on will get on. I believe that if they really dedicate themselves to work, and it is harder, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's easier in comparison to get those 3 A's, it's not. It's going to be a lot tougher, but they will get there if they really want it.
Statistically, they don't. I mean, you can't say just by virtue of someone who's...
Statistically, the
surely the right way in this country would be 97% of places... Sorry, 93% of places at university go to state school people and 7% go to private school.
That's why we pay for private education, I'm afraid to say. Because it's not necessarily better education, but there's more sort of streamlining. You're put in different sets, and the really bright ones get to the top of the set, and the ones that don't get a good education, but they're down the bottom.
Okay.
You know, what's wrong with that at government schools, really? Streamlining it brings out the bright pupils.
Believe me, I'm sympathetic to that. I just, in the interim, do we just let things carry on the way they are, Martin? You got piece up.
OK, well, first one's not a newspaper. It comes from the BBC News. David Cameron has been accused of a U-turn over military covenant where the head of the Royal British Legion has said Prime Minister David Cameron reneging on his promise to enshrine the military covenant in law. This is all about... Cameron went to the Art Royal last year and gave a lecture saying he was going to look after the troops, make sure their education of their kids was taken care of, if the family was taken care of, if they were injured. Yeah. I mean, and he's saying the army has to suffer cutbacks just like everyone else. But surely these people are fighting for our country. We should give them, when they're abroad or fighting, tax-free money. We should look after their family for the rest of their life if they're killed or injured badly. And I believe we should always look after their kids. And I think... everyone in the country wouldn't mind making an exception of the armed forces and saying
absolutely.
we have to look after them.
We don't have to do that. All those bankers squealing yesterday because
Yeah.
they've got to pay a bit more, and it's a tiny amount over their profits. They're still paying billions of pounds in bonuses. It ain't right that they're whinging. These guys take cuts. It's not on. Not on.
Absolutely.
Not on.
I now move to that rag I don't usually read. It's quite exciting, really. It's The Guardian. Marriage
You
ruined
don't feel
by...
it's the paper for you. Now it's sold out on Labour and embraced the Lib Dems and then kind of changed its mind about that.
Marriage ruined by hello values, says Duncan Smith. Duncan Smith's actually proving to be quite astute with his comments recently. He's basically saying the amount of money people spend on a wedding, up to about 20 grand on average,
I
is
imagine
nonsense.
Middleton's will cost a bit more, but yeah.
Just to keep up the image, keeping up with the Joneses.
Keep up with the royals.
You know, 20 grand is a good deposit on a house, and they're all moaning they can't put a deposit on a house. Yet they go off and get married. There was a woman the other day, I know it was her own money, but 9 different wedding outfits. I think he's got a good point that people should think about the future, not just the day. And actually, when you get married, I had to say to my wife, step back against the wall, have a look around you. Are you happy? No. You know, you just don't get a chance to talk to anyone. They're all having fun, but you're panicking.
Yeah.
You're in stress mode.
Thing
You're
is, that
worried about
if you
your
think about the
father-in-law's gonna say
future
something.
before you, the long-term future before you get married, you ain't going to do it, are you?
No,
My life was great until I got married. Since I got married, I've been made homeless. Yeah, it's horrible.
It is.
Got a
It's
dog.
appalling. Right, we now move to the Telegraph. Infertility
No
is an...
sex.
I told you. Read that book. Right. Infertility
I think
is
the
an
wife already
illness.
has.
A serious issue now,
Yes,
please
okay,
concentrate.
okay.
Infertility is an illness. There's campaigner calling for ends to cuts. This is about basically they're saying the health service is treating infertility clinics just like they would hair transplants or facelifts
It's a
or
fascinating
things
question,
like
isn't
this.
it? Is
They're
fertility...
being pushed to the bottom of the list.
Is it an illness?
It probably is an illness, but there are, in my opinion, and it's hard, but there are an awful lot of kids out there waiting to be adopted.
Yeah, and there's also too many people on the planet, and maybe this is nature's way of addressing the balance, and that what we're trying to do is waste precious, life-saving funds to continue overpopulating the planet.
We have more single parents in this country or unwanted teenage pregnancies. Make use of them, I'd say. There you go. It's hard. Right. Hard.
We might discuss that tomorrow, actually, because I think it's a fascinating issue as to whether it's an illness or not, and where we put it on the list of priorities in the house.
Exactly. The sun. Kids are bearing up well. This is a photo of 2 children playing with a polar bear. It's a brilliant pet, but little do you know that in between those 2 children and the polar bear is a massive great glass wall. This is in it's in Canada, Ontario, and you get surprise reactions from the photos. But you can have your kid photographed like that, saying, "Oh, it's really nice. I want to go to the North Pole and pat these polar bears and have my arm taken off." But there you go. That's the way. And finally, I think this is magic. Have you seen this photo in the Daily Express of Meryl Streep transformed as Mrs. T, Maggie Thatcher?
Anyone else having nightmares?
I know, but she's amazing. I mean, isn't it? Is it the lips? Is it the hairline? I mean, it's quite extraordinary. That looks like Maggie T when she was young. A little bit eye difference, and Maggie's got a slightly hooded eye. She needed that facelift, but Meryl Streep. No, Maggie, she won't mind. She needs ironing now, not a facelift. Right. Okay, enough. Okay, fine. Oh, dear. I do get into trouble, don't I? Anyway, this is...